Hello again, everyone. Alex here. Another week's of processed images to have a look through. Quite a few more this week, actually, over 50. So I'll go a bit faster than I usually have in the past. Just checking this is all working. Okay, it looks like it is. As always, I'll leave the camera settings up on the side here. Perhaps I'll click on the second one to show you. So you can see here that this picture here was taken with a Nikon D850 105mm lens. You can see the camera settings, f14, 1250th ISO, 125, that sort of thing on the right hand side. If you want to sort of dig a bit more deeper into that, or you can't see those numbers, you kind of need to watch this video back and hide it on an HD setting on YouTube on quite a large screen probably to read them. All these pictures are also uploaded onto my website now. That's not always the case the day these videos go out, because sometimes I might make the video before I've uploaded them onto my website and that sort of thing. But I'll just show you how you can find pictures like on my website just quickly. So if I just switch over to my website here, if you just click into new images, that will take you straight into the photo library. So it's just loading up the latest images. We saw these in the previous video. These are the pictures from Cape Moray in the North UK. So if I type in, that was a hairy frogfish. So if I type in hairy frogfish and spell it correctly in the top, it'll bring up all the pictures of hairy frogfish. I can scroll through my pictures. That was the picture we were just looking at. If I click on that, it'll load it up a little bit larger. We can see the picture, read what it is, and then here under image info on the right hand side, if you can see the mouse, if I click that, it then opens up all the camera settings. So if you are interested in the camera settings, a lot of pictures say no flash, and that's just the way underwater flash guns connect to the camera. The camera doesn't always know the flash is fired. It depends a bit how you have them connected. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but nearly all my pictures are taken with flash, so ignore that. But other than that, you can see all the various settings that I've used and little bits and pieces there if you want a bit more information. If you want to see the picture better, because the versions on the website are generated by the website, so they're not the world's best quality JPEGs. If you click on that picture again, it'll open a new window, and that new window shows you the picture at the full resolution that I uploaded onto the website, which is always 1500 by 1000 pixels, and you can see it in a little bit more detail, and you just close that window when you're done. Right, back into Bridge. Right, so I was going to run through a few of the pictures I've processed. I was hoping to go diving this week, but it was just a little bit difficult with my wife's got a lot of work on, so it wasn't a good week for me to zip away from home, so for a day or so. So as a result, I decided to dive into the archives, and the day that I was going to use for diving, I decided to process some old muck diving pictures from Lembeh mainly, and a few from the Philippines. And I've just started that. I kind of pulled out 100 I wanted to process, and I've probably processed about 30 or 40 so far. And there's quite a few frogfish to begin with, so have a look at these. This is a hairy frogfish. This one's a hairy frogfish. I don't normally process the pictures that I have of hairy frogfish or frogfish when they're yawning. Frogfish yawns are generally frogfish showing that they're not particularly pleased with the attention that you're giving them, and they yawn as a kind of warning. And I know a lot of photographers prize a yawn shot above all others, and I've never really felt that comfortable with these shots, certainly not showing them off. But I also realised the other day when I searched frogfish yawn on my website, there were hardly any. And so I thought I ought to process a few of them, because I do have those shots. I just choose not to promote them. But I've added a few here. So there's a few yawn shots here, like this one here, of this frogfish. I quite like the way this one was sitting down here, camouflaged at the bottom of the frame. They're D850 files, so they're huge. This is a giant frogfish with my wife modelling behind. I quite like the fact there's a boat at the top of this picture as well. It adds a few extra layers, the fish in the water column. And I like the angle of the leather coral that it's sitting on, the way it kind of produces a diagonal down to the bottom of the frame. So I find this quite a nicely balanced picture. Shot really to be sort of more magazine-y cover. Probably benefit from a little bit more of a crop for a magazine cover, just to basically crop in a little bit from the bottom, which would increase the relative space at the top for the masthead and that sort of thing. Just nice to work. I mean, it wasn't really set up to be a great vertical, but I like the shot. A few more frogfish faces. When I'm shooting frogfish, certainly when I'm doing portraits and that sort of thing, one of the first things that I'll try with any frogfish is going down to single strobe and just firing a single strobe from the side that the face is facing you from, like this. I think so. In this case here, the strobe that I was firing was probably towards the right hand side of the picture here, going across the frogfish, and it just creates lots of texture, lots of nice shadow in the picture, and it makes it very easy to get this dark background around them, even if they're on the seabed, because with flash only coming from one side, you get basically a shadow thrown by the frogfish, which then creates a nice dark background in which to photograph it against. So this frogfish wasn't framed against open water, simply framed against its own shadow. This another one here. Like I said before, I'm not a big fan of going for yawning shots, but I always like to get shots of frogfish fishing using their lure. It's obviously a key part of their anatomy, so it's great to get it into the stories. But I think it also shows that you're going about your frogfish photos in the right sort of way. If they're relaxed enough to carry on fishing, it's kind of got a good message in your picture. I like this giant frogfish here sitting under this yellow elephant ear sponge. Just because it's obviously very cool camouflage, but I love that the elephant ear sponge is got all these I think they're long nosed gobies on it, sitting on it. You can see them all around here, all around the frame, which I think is quite fun. This picture here is shot with my Olympus OM10, which I quite often carry on these muck dives or ask a dive guide to carry on these muck dives as a second camera, so that I have a wide angle for this type of opportunity. I think this was actually taken on the same dive. I remember this guy being... I think the lump you can see in the background of this picture is actually the big sponge that the frogfish was on. And this Battiva batfish was... A young Battiva batfish was hanging around. Juvenile batfish, obviously, there's quite a few different types. This one here is prettier when it's younger. It's even more zebra striped. But I quite like this intermediate... Oh, sorry, I zoomed in. This intermediate stage version of it. So I processed it out. Another yawning hairy frogfish. This one's pretty grotesque, but anyway, it's increased my yawn count from my website, which was a bit poor before. I like how this white one, really, this white warty frogfish, was really blending into its environment of white sponges, and I think almost the yawn kind of reveals it, which I think is quite cool. This is a nighttime exposure with a torch behind this veined octopus, which is hiding in these mollusk shells, as they often do. And these bivalve shells, and just using a backlight with a torch, and then just doing a nice slow exposure with the torch, and the color temperature difference between my flashes, which are lighting the octopus, and the fact the octopus is quite a brown warm color, and then the cold light of the underwater focus light has created a really nice effect, I think, of this kind of bluey background and kind of warm colored subject, which gives that nice classic photographic warm against cold color shift, which I think looks really nice. I really like all the streakiness in these pictures. I kind of would criticize this streakiness as in kind of what is it really telling us about the subject. But I do really like the way that, I mean, the current on this dive is sweeping around the octopus. And you really see how the flow, it really shows you how the hydrodynamics are working, in that you've got kind of this smooth laminar flow on the left and in the background, and then you've got this turbulence coming off the octopus. I don't think it's of any relevance to the lifestyle of the octopus, but I think it's quite nice to see that you can really see it's a natural flow. Right, some controversial images. This one and the next one are both underwater studio photos, where I picked up the nudibranch and put it on the studio on a white slate, took the photos, and then put the nudibranch back on the reef. These are both from the same dive. I only did this once and very briefly. David Dubilier did a fantastic series photographically using this technique, but to a much higher level, and dedicating many dive trips to shooting this technique. And produced some really stunning pictures of nudibranchs as a result. And I know that they did get a lot of criticism from underwater photographers for promoting moving subject matter. But I thought that, that it was a really interesting photographic project, and I don't think anyone was ever suggesting that everyone goes out and does it. And I just wanted to do a few shots, and I only did it for a small period on one dive, actually just done on the house reef at Lembeh Resort, on a dive there. I just wanted to do it really so that if I ever wanted to write about the technique, I knew kind of how it was done, etc. So this was actually done with a backlight on the slate to get that really bright white around the nudibranchs, and then just to do these shots. They're not brilliant shots at all. I'd never processed them before. These are old pictures, and I thought, you know what, I should really process these out. So at least I've got them for a talk should I ever decide to use them, but I probably won't because of the controversy associated with them. Another hairy frogfish here. I like shooting the hairy frogfish. I like shooting lots of Lembeh critters with shallow depth of field. I don't like them always on black backgrounds. I feel the black backgrounds just feel very artificial, very dead. I like getting this feeling of the blue of the ocean in the background of the pictures, particularly with warm coloured subject matter. And I think that this shallow depth of field helps blur out the ugly rubble that they tend to live in Lembeh, and allows you to see the beautiful face of the frogfish and get a feeling for its environment without the environment sort of ruining the picture. This was a tiny, it doesn't look tiny, but it was quite a tiny post-larval Moorish idol on a night dive. It's quite common to see Moorish idols on night dives, post-larvae ones settling in. Moorish idols have very long larval stages, and it's one of the reasons I think why this is such a widespread species in the Indo-Pacific. It's one of the widest spread sort of coral reef fish in the Indo-Pacific, going all the way from the Red Sea all the way right across the Pacific as well, right across the Indian Ocean, right through Southeast Asia, right across the Pacific. And I think the long larval stage clearly contributes to this. So they're quite big when they settle out of the larvae. But anyway, they're quite a common sight on night dives or even blackwater dives. And I just thought I'd press this one out. I thought it was quite just helped tell a quite an interesting story. I like how big its eye is in this picture. It looks like it's a youngster with big eyes. Like next picture here, this is just a Chromodoris Anna. Oh, sorry, I haven't been showing you the settings. I've been looking at these all big. So just to run back through a few, so anyone's interested in the settings. There we go. You can read them off now as I whiz back through what we've just been looking through. Right, the Chromodoris Anna, or Anni, is just this one. Not a brilliant nudibranch shot. It's actually the same species that's on the photo studio above. Just got a lot more red in the rhinophores and in the gills than that one. Then these cleaning shots of a mapper pufferfish, and it had these clear cleaning shrimp cleaning it. It's actually, I think this shot here kind of shows them all trooping onto the pufferfish, and then the pufferfish opened his gill, which you can see here in the middle of the frame, and then the shrimps went to clean inside the gills. It wasn't the best photographic opportunity. I was kind of had the wrong lens on in some ways. The clear shrimps, although they were really cool, actually they kind of got a bit lost on the background. I think perhaps the gill shot is better because the shrimp's a bit more obvious than in this picture here, even though there's 3 shrimps on the pufferfish and the pufferfish pattern is really nice. The shrimps get a little bit lost, and as a result I don't think the picture has quite as much impact as it should do. Another painted frogfish fishing, here shot with single strobe from the side. Those that have been to my macro classes will know that this is a undo the clamp on that strobe, let the strobe sag to the seabed type shot where you get the light just skimming across the surface of the sand and lighting up the frogfish. Then some of these large whip gobies. As you can see, there's a real bruiser here sitting on this umbrellifera, if I can say that correctly, soft coral. It's a big soft coral that looks like broccoli. This is quite interesting. This is a Maldives nudibranch swimming, and these quite commonly swim. And you can see that this one is swimming because when they swim, what they do is they squash their body, which is normally quite flat. Actually, they look almost like a pancake on the seabed. They squash their body horizontally, so they end up as kind of like a tall, long flap with these, a bit like your hand really, with the carata sticking out the top, these big sort of club-like things at the top, but they're very flattened, their body, and then they waggle the body. I'm doing it with my hands, but obviously you can't see. They waggle their head and their tail in opposite directions, and it makes them quite effective swimmers. You can see that one here is, you can see it's actually in the middle of doing that proper natural swimming behaviour in this picture. It's flattened its body, and you can see it's twisting its body in the swimming pattern. Curious lionfish, not really a critter that you go to Lembeh for, but it was just a nice lionfish. It was probably swimming, sort of coming investigating what the photographers were up to. So nice subject coming onto the camera, easy to steal a portrait of. Again, not showing you settings. So these are the settings. Then a pair of Flabellina. Oh, is it Expata? Oh, I can't remember its name. But they're Flabellina nudibranchs there. I think these two were, just probably going to mate fairly soon after this, or had been. This one clearly looks like he's in the mood, or he and she, because obviously nudibranchs are hermaphrodites. So when they mate like this, they both pass sperm to each other, and then they can both go away and lay their own eggs, fertilized by the other one's sperm. Another goby on soft coral. This one here is looks like a many host goby, or a common ghost goby. Just a pretty little female common seahorse, or yellow seahorse. I think that it's that quite regularly the females of this species are the yellow ones, or in this case probably just gone a little bit orangey. There was quite a lot of orange ones on this dive site at this time. I think it was Air Badger maybe when we were there. It's quite a long time ago now for me to remember the dive site just off the top of my head. And then Terra Aeolidia. Gosh, it's hard work doing all these. Sempre, or whatever it's called, Sempre. Which is the very distinctive long snake-like, sometimes called a blue dragon, nudibranch. They're quite variable, and when they get big, they tend to rely much more on their kind of solar-powered nature. So they have endosymbiotic zooxanthellae in their serrata, and then when they want to feed that algae so that they can benefit from it growing, they kind of flay themselves out like this on the sand. And that allows them to absorb the maximum amount of light and give themselves nutrition. Another frogfish you can see again. See a frogfish, go to one strobe, shoot it in from the side, drop the strobe as low to the sand as possible by releasing that clamp so it just sags to the sand, and you get this lovely light skimming across the sand, and it just picks the subject out from the background. You could frame tighter and just do the face like this and have a face on a black background, but this case here I shot the whole frogfish. This guy was actually moving. You can see he's kind of working his way. I think it looks like even his siphon is blowing there at the back. Then a couple of stickies, which are animals on sticks. This is a Tenacella sea whip with this many host ghost goby, or common ghost goby, and here a xeno crab on a black coral, on a Cirripathes. What's the Latin name of black coral? I can't remember now. Okay, and now I've opened that in Photoshop. That was a mistake. Since it's in Photoshop, you might as well see it in Photoshop. This is a hairy shrimp, very, very tiny little critter. And this one's really unusual in that it's got these antennae, which I presume are his, but I don't really remember having such weird and distinctive antennae coming off hairy shrimps before. Maybe they just haven't been in the plane of focus, and therefore they haven't shown up in the pictures. But yeah, I found that quite interesting, so I processed this one out. I don't really love this purpley blodge down the bottom of the frame here. I wish it didn't have that, but I do quite like these two tunicates on either side. They kind of give a nice balance and additional interest to the frame. And this hairy shrimp did have a very nice colour. Let's go back into bridge. Did have a really nice colour to it. Another sticky. This is just a tiny ghost goby on another type of whip coral that I can't, or gorgonian. I can't identify this whip coral. It's got something weird going on in its belly. This one. It looks a bit like he's eaten a little amphipod or something. Amphipod or something. But I've no idea what this is in his belly. There's the ghost goby. It's a very young one, very very small, very transparent. But it does look like it's got something going on in its belly, but I can't tell what that is. Right, then a few frogfish. These are shot with snoot, actually. I remember at the end of this Lembeh trip, and obviously the pictures are in chronological order, so on the last few days, I'd lost my own snoot. So I remember borrowing Adam Hanlon, my friend's YS300 and snoot, because he didn't have a snoot that would fit my strobe. So we swapped strobes for the last few days of the trip. So I was shooting with the CNC strobe, with the Inon strobe, the YS330, using a retro snoot on that. And these shots are all these last three are all taken with snoots. So you can see nice fast shutter speeds, 1/320th, f22, and then really low ISO 40, ISO 31 for this one. Really just making sure I'm not getting any ambient light coming into the pictures. And then this one here, when wanting to play with ambient light. Oh, sorry, wrong picture. When I want to play with ambient light, slowing the shutter speed down so I can have a nice long exposure, and then use a little bit of camera movement to blur the seabed. with movement around the frogfish and creating a really interesting effect. And then using the snooted light to illuminate the frogfish. And then just another xeno crab here. They usually hang on the underside of the sea whips. And I realised all my photos, obviously we take pictures of them and then tend to flip the photo so they're the right way up to look at, if you know what I mean. But it's not really true to life. So I thought this one here, because it had a nice gradient of dark blue to light blue in the picture that gave it an orientation. I actually was quite pleased to process one that actually showed that they do tend to hang on the underside. It's a bit more of a secretive place for them to live, a bit less exposed to predators of the black coral sea whips. Oh, and then the final shot, just a side-lit white-eye moray. It's quite a pleasing image. Right, then onto the Maldives. I'm still processing a few Maldives pictures from current trip and a couple from previous trips as well. Just having just been to the Maldives, I've still got a few pictures I want to process more in my initial pass. And then there's a few shots from other trips I go, oh yes, I should have a bit more coverage of that. So there's a couple of eagle ray shots here. This was taken in horrible visibility, if I remember. And this was taken in really nice visibility on a different dive. I really like the patterns on the back of this eagle ray. He's got fantastic streaks on him. I've no idea what causes all these streaks and things. He's quite beaten up by something. Probably other eagle rays or something. Is it a female? It looks like a female, but I think maybe you can't see. Maybe those could even be... it's hard to tell from this angle, I think, if it's a female or a male. But really interesting, it's got all these streaks. I have no idea what causes those on its back. Then just some healthy stand of fast-growing staghorn, acropora coral. You can see there's a little chevron butterfly fish hiding in there. Not a great photo, but hard coral in the Maldives is always a big talking point. So it's nice to have pictures like this because of all the bleaching issues that they've had there. When you get the chance to shoot healthy hard coral in the Maldives, it's always good to have those shots to mix in with obviously some of the shots of dead reefs. And these are some dolphins here, just some bottlenose dolphins in very, very murky conditions. I had to process this one quite heavily just to try and get anything out of the file. It's not a file that you'd really want to ever see bigger than small. But because a lot of these pictures get used by the resort in Lamu, I thought they might appreciate having at least a shot of some dolphins, because they see dolphins a lot, but you don't get many chances to get underwater photos of them. So I thought, even if they don't use it big, it might be quite useful in a report or something for them. And then just some other snaps from my last Red Sea trip. This is a yellow margin moray, a very pretty moray with the yellow eye and the yellow mottling in its body. This one here living in a Sinularia, a digitate or fingered leather coral. Nice. I actually processed a horizontal of this, and I thought it's such a nice setup. I'll do a vertical as well. It's good to have a vertical and horizontal. Then a current point. Like most divers, I spend a lot of time at the current points in the Maldives reef waiting for something to happen, and then that moment that all the fish suddenly all mass together because a predator came past or something like that, that's when you hit the shutter. I don't think this is the best composition I've caught at a current point, but I do like the density of fish, the fact that there's a synchronous movement in them, and that you've got multiple species here in layers within the picture. And then this dopey parrotfish down the bottom here, who's got no idea what's going on. Oh gosh, so long. So then a couple more turtle shots. I thought there was a feeding turtle in this selection. Seems to have disappeared somewhere. This is a hawksbill turtle just swimming on the reef. I quite like this. Was the shot where I was shooting it. It was swimming, and I didn't move the camera. It was kind of, I was watching it going out of the frame. I'd sort of done my shot, but the shot I thought was going to be the best shot just before this, and then it sort of swam to this thing and just went to this really nice position, and I took the photo, and at the time I was like, oh damn, I should have moved the camera obviously with the turtle, but I was kind of trying to stay still, trying to keep the turtle relaxed, and actually because of that it did go on and then go straight back to feeding, and I was able to get really nice feeding shots that I showed you in the previous video actually. But actually I quite like this kind of jaunty composition with the turtle leaving the frame. I think it adds a bit of extra sort of unusualness and interest to it, but it was purely sort of accidental really, me not wanting to move. The turtle suddenly went to a good position and I instinctively pressed the shutter, and then at the time I took it was quite disappointed with it. This is another EMWL in your face turtle very, very close to the front of the lens shot. Bit of fun with a hawksbill turtle. And then a very very soft corally reef in the Maldives here with Scleronepthia, soft corals mainly, and that blackfin squirrelfish sort of dominating the composition. Not an amazing composition, this. It was a bit of we didn't get the dive that well organised as a group actually on the boat. We all ended up in the same place at the same time, and whereas we should have staggered the groups more effectively. On the boat, we were small groups, we were a small number of people anyway, but it was just for photographers it didn't quite work, so it's not the best composition. I was kind of just trying to stay out of everyone's way really. And then I think the final few pictures are I've reprocessed some I found some previously unprocessed great white shark pictures from a Guadalupe trip. These are very old pictures taken with a Nikon D3, and I thought I'd process these out just for a bit of fun. Using super resolution, you can get lots of resolution out of these old files. Lovely detail comes through. This was originally a 12 megapixel file, now a 48 megapixel file. The modern processing, a lot of this picture in particular was quite a blue shot at the time, and the processing at the time didn't really allow you to get much color out of it. And then now, you're able to white balance it, you're able to use selective tools, and in 2 or 3 seconds, it's suddenly a completely different picture. So it's just a chance to process out some of these and grab some of these shots of these impressive beasts. And fantastic resolution, considering it's taken on a camera that we would all consider almost an antique these days. But the files and the modern processing get so much out of those pictures. And then I was processing a few frogfish photos, and I remembered there was a couple I wanted to process from my last Philippines trip, which was also pre-pandemic. And this is just a yellow painted frogfish shot with a snoot. So the frogfish was illuminated by snoot, and the surrounding seabed was lit with a red light from my focus light on my camera to create this kind of cool effect. I just thought the red and the yellow would look pretty cool together and a little bit different. This one here is another snoot lit frogfish, this time a hairy frogfish. And then the background here is a double exposure, so in camera double exposure. Using a macro lens as well, probably taken on the same dive, with the macro lens focused purposely out of focus and then used to photograph the sun, and that creates these really interesting sun bokeh patterns. Not the sun itself, but photographing the evening sunlight on the sea surface, creating these interesting bokeh patterns, which I've overlaid in the camera to create a new raw file and create this picture. And then the final shot is just this fun one here. We all regularly get shown by eagle-eyed dive guides these absolutely minuscule frogfish, and the story of them, of course, is how small they are. So you should never, when you see a frogfish like this, like put on your super magnification and shoot it, because it just won't really show up how small it is. Much better to actually shoot it without any special magnification and put something else in the frame that allows you to see what size it is. People often use pointers or get a dive guide's finger or something like that. This is actually my own left thumb in the background of the photo, so I'd focused on the frogfish and then reached round behind it and held my thumb in the frame as well, and took this picture to show how tiny it was, and shot it with quite an open aperture to give it that feeling of being small, having limited depth of field. So I think all those are tricks. I think you could argue that might be better with my thumb in focus, but I quite like it with my thumb out of focus. I think it gives a good effect. Right, that's it. Thanks for listening. I'll be back again sometime soon. Maybe not for a little while. I don't know how much time I'm going to have to process pictures, but I'm off to Mexico soon, so after that trip I'll have lots of new pictures to share, I'm sure. Okay, bye.